Good afternoon. I'm Nonnie Moore. I represent the lecture subcommittee of the activities committee. We have 2 lectures a month. The Tuesday one is in the Legacy Theater, and the Thursday one obviously is right here. So we are delighted to welcome you to the first one in Ohlone Hall for 2019. And starting off is one of our amazing residents. He's going to share about amazing wildlife, but he's amazing just in and of itself. I'd like to tell you a little bit about him, and then he'll tell you more, I'm sure, as he goes along. Ray is an exceptional photographer, but before he was a photographer, he grew up on a farm in Iowa, went to school in Iowa, and then also at San Jose State. Had a very illustrious career at Sandia in New Mexico and here in California. Retired from Sandia and became one of his pleasures was to be a lecturer on Princess Cruises. He did quite a few of those, and we've been lucky to hear here at Stoneridge Creek several of those lectures that he gave, going through the Panama Canal, the Wild West, the railroad, and now he's concentrating on his wildlife photography. His work is very prominent on the campus. You've seen the mural between Tahoe and the garden terraces, the original garden terraces, and now we're also seeing the wonderful paintings of wildlife on the utility boxes. His photography is what inspired the artist to paint those. So we're hoping at some point he'll lead a walk around and share those with everybody. Or maybe a walk down the Arroyo to share these wonderful, amazing wildlife pictures. This is the second of the wildlife presentations. All of the wildlife is within 2 miles, Ray, of the campus. So it's accessible, it's close. And please help me welcome our wonderful photographer, Ray Rychnovsky.
Thank you, Nonnie. That's a great introduction. Wow. I don't have too much more to say. You missed one little thing. I was a writer for quite a while after I retired, and I've written a number of books and a lot of magazine articles. So that's one more thing that I've done, which probably isn't too important. I do thank you for coming, and I'm glad to see so many people here. The places I photograph are the Arroyo, usually between Stoneridge Creek and down towards El Charro. And so that's my favorite place to photograph. The second one is the rookery at Shadow Cliffs Lake, which is off Stanley Boulevard, about 2 miles straight south of here as the crow flies. And that's happening right now. The birds are just beginning to nest, and so if you want to go out there and see them, you can see the whole cycle of nesting, carrying sticks to the nest, and so on. And then by June or so, they'll be leaving the nest. And so that's an interesting part of it. This is a snowy egret, and it has a fish in its mouth. And it was caught right down here at Arroyo Creek. I've shown this before. I said I'm not going to use any photographs that I used in my last talk, but I like this one so well I'm going to do it anyway. And maybe a lot of you have not seen it. But which weighs more, a hummingbird or a nickel? The nickel, okay. Well, the nickel weighs 0.176 ounces, and a hummingbird, like the ones we have here, are 0.1 to 0.15. So the nickel is right. The nickel weighs more. These are to scale, pretty much. And so, you look at that hummingbird and say, wow, there's not much there. But it's, it's all feathers. Everything is light. It flies, and it's got to be light to fly, so it's designed to fly. I wanted to bring this up because birds are light. They really surprise you on how little they weigh. I've kind of opened this up into categories and followed these. I'm starting out with small birds, and those are actually birds that weigh an ounce or less. Medium birds weigh 1.5 ounces to 5 ounces. And after that, I've kind of did not so much the weight as the type of bird, so shorebirds, so on, hawks, egrets, and then finally a few mammal pictures. Small birds. Start with the hummingbird, the smallest. And you can imagine how big that nest is. You know, it's just not very big. They lay eggs, usually 2, and they're the size of jelly beans. And this is the male. And they feed their young. Last spring, I was following 5 nests, and there were actually 2 of them where I was able to get pictures of them feeding the chicks. You can see the eyes are not open yet. You can see that you're just seeing head. There's not many feathers there. This is just recently after it was or shortly after it was hatched. And another picture now showing a couple of them. And then one when they're just before they flew. I took pictures this day. The next day they were gone. The hummingbirds, kind of, I guess, characteristic of birds is that the young, before they fledge, are about the size of the adult birds. They're really pretty big. The lesser goldfinch, this weighs like 1/3 of an ounce. And it's so colorful. There's a goldfinch painted on the box right as you come in. And I think maybe it's this one. I'm not sure if it's this one or a different one. Lots of goldfinches. So they're so colorful and they're so fun to feed. Another bird that's a small bird is a yellow rumped warbler. Well, you can really see how it's got its name. And you can see the frontal view, it has a lot of yellow on it. It's got yellow there at the neck, and then on each side it's got tufts of yellow. A black phoebe. We see black phoebes a lot. We see them on campus a lot. So if you see a black bird that's mostly black, it's probably a black phoebe. And if you really can then see the under part of it and get that white patch, then yeah, you know for sure it's a black phoebe. There's a Say's phoebe that is a little bit heavier. This is about 3/4 of an ounce. And it is a bird that will hover. Not too much, but it's a bird that will hover like a helicopter. And we see those around. You'll see those on campus. A song sparrow, and these are hard to identify. I look at these sparrows and you say, okay, is this a song sparrow or is it something else? And Nonnie, did I get this right? So Nonnie is one of my identifiers. Marguerite is another, and Bob Middlecoff. Those are the people. When I go, okay, I don't know what this bird is, I send them pictures, and then they send me answers. And so I really appreciate that. Male house finch, and you can pretty easy to identify because of its red head and short beak. And then the female house finch, and this one has tufts. I've never seen another one with tufts. It's not necessarily a characteristic of this bird. I've sent questions to a park ranger that I know who really knows birds, and she says, you know, you really don't identify these, and they have these variations that are hard to pinpoint. We have cliff swallows. There are a lot of cliff swallows at both of our bridges, at all of our bridges, but Stoneridge Creek Bridge, and that has developed since I was here. When I first came, there weren't any swallows there, but now there are a lot of them there. And there are a lot of swallows at the El Charro bridges. And you can see that the cliff swallow is easy to identify because he has this white forehead. And the other swallows that I know of, they're tree swallows, and they do not have that characteristic. They're not as colorful as the cliff swallow. They build their nest out of mud, and so the bridges are just perfect for them because all they have to do is fly down to the creek, get some mud, make a pellet out of it, bring it up, and do the next part of the construction on its nest. And so it builds that, and then, of course, leaves it opening. The white-crowned sparrow, very easy to identify. He has all of these marks on the head. Another picture of one. Sometimes I put these in here because I like the picture. Sometimes I put them in there because I want to make a point. So there's a little bit of both. And then I happened to catch one as it was flying, so I included that picture. Gold-crowned sparrow, very similar to the white-crowned sparrow. Another bird is a California towhee. This is the first one in the medium-sized birds, and it weighs about 1.5 ounces. Where I'm getting my weights is from the book Sibley, which is an Audubon book, but it's a great book, and what I really like about it is it gives the weights of all the birds. And so I think that, well, okay, it's all from the same source. It's kind of consistent. They're not, some of them, sometimes you might be doing the small birds or the chicks, and other times the largest birds. So I think this is pretty consistent from bird to bird. And another picture, the California towhee, but this time he has a worm of some sort that he's got a meal or a part of a meal. The mockingbird, about 1.7 ounces, not a really big bird, but you know, this is the bird that could mock all the other birds and make the sounds of a lot of birds. I know at home here in Livermore, we had a mockingbird on our roof that would come out in the morning, and he would just sing all kinds of different songs. You kind of knew it was a mockingbird, but you didn't know it just from the sound. I titled this with "Dinner is on the Way." Do you see the dinner? So right here, there's an insect that's flying right this way. So I don't know what happened to that insect, but I have a pretty good idea. An acorn woodpecker. Almost all of the pictures I'm showing were taken from, this Arroyo area or Shadow Cliffs. This one was taken in Snow Park. That's where I got the picture. These birds are here, or they're in Pleasant, and they're around. But I happened to get this picture in Snow Park. And you can see that they store their acorns in a tree. And why don't other birds come in and take those acorns? Well, they put them in there so hard the other birds can't get them out. And so they can do that. And when the tree shrinks or changes and the holes get a little bigger or whatever, then it gets loose in there. So they come in there and tap them in again or move them to a different place. And we have a couple of different jays. This is the western scrub jay, and that's what we see mostly around here. There's a stellar jay, and I've seen the stellar jays at Del Val Park, but I haven't seen one right here. And by the way, these pictures I'm showing you, they're probably about half or 2/3 of the birds that I've seen around here. There are a lot of others that, that I've only seen once, or that I didn't get a really good picture or whatever. Killdeer. Are you familiar with the killdeer? When I grew up in Iowa, we had killdeer around, and they had this particular sound. It sounded like killdeer, killdeer, killdeer. So that's how it's got its name. It has a particular characteristic that it builds its nest on the ground, and I'm not sure it never builds them anyplace else, but it builds them on the ground. And then when predators approach the nest, the killdeer, the parent, runs away from the nest. It drags its wing, and it acts like it can't fly. Well, the predator follows, and after he's lured him off the nest a ways, then he just flies away. And this is what they look like when they fly. They've got a little more color. And I was really lucky to get this picture. I don't know. You see the bird, you snap the picture, it's in there. I have no idea why it's in focus. It's on something like that. I say, okay, probably isn't in focus, but this one was. We have the western meadowlark. We had meadowlarks in Iowa where I grew up. These are a little different, but they sound the same. And let's see, these weigh about 2.7 ounces. They're not very large. I've got a list of how big the birds are. I'll look that up. 3.4 ounces for the meadowlark. And the mourning dove. We see a lot of mourning doves. They're always perched on the roofs of the carport where we go. There's always a dove sitting there, and they're pretty tame. You can get pretty close, so you can get pretty good pictures. these pictures pretty much fill the frame. You know, a lot of times I really crop a lot to get the picture, but these pretty well fill the frame. And so I've got a couple of them. I think they were probably taken at the same time because the background is similar. And so there's two of them. Belted kingfisher. Are you familiar with the kingfisher? You know that back in Iowa we had them. I've seen them up in Canada. They're pretty prevalent in a lot of places. And I love they have these collars. And the belted kingfisher is the one that has the collars. There are other kingfishers that don't, but it has a collar, blue here and red here. And I like that their comb, their feathers at the top of their head. What that really makes me think of is woody woodpecker. So there the kingfisher is fine. They hang out above the stream, and I very often see them. Well, I don't see them all that much, but when I do, they're often between El Charro Road and east of El Charro Road. Now, I talk about the big oak tree, and if you go east of El Charro Road, there's a big oak tree there, and then the footbridge, and there's a groundwater reclamation pond there, just like there is out near the tennis court. And it's got a lot of water in it, and so we go out, those are the areas that I work in. Well, this is down by the creek, and there's some trees overhanging the arroyo, and so that's where I see the kingfishers. And they don't usually get very close to you, so most of these are pretty enlarged and pretty cropped quite a bit. I'm going to move on over to shorebirds. I'm not doing it so much by weight now, but these are yellow legs. There are two different types of yellow legs, a lesser yellow legs and a greater yellow legs. And this, I think, is the lesser, and it's like 2.7 ounces. But you can definitely see that, yeah, it's got its name from the yellow legs. And the black-eyed stilt, they're there right now. I saw some yesterday. And so this is the adult, so this is about 2.6 ounces. And, of course, this is the chick. So it looks quite a bit different than the adult, but those are the two. Another one that I really like is the Avocet, and I only see it in that area. And it has a turned-up beak. You can see this turned up a little bit, and so that's a characteristic of it. But it usually has these bright colors, too, so they're pretty easy to identify. Sometimes they have a little squabble there. They tolerate each other pretty well. But if they get too close or whatever it is, they'll have a little squabble. In this case, the Avocet, and it weighs about 11 ounces. And this black-necked stilt is like 6 ounces, so it's about twice as big. But they fight back and forth. They squabble back and forth. Nothing very serious, it seems. But one time one's the aggressor, and the other time the other's the aggressor. Mallards. We see so many mallards here. This looks like a female mallard, right? Well, the male mallard that we normally think of is the green head, and I'll show you that picture in a minute. But that's a mating coloration. This is a non-mating coloration. So right now, they're in the mating season, so you see the green heads, and other times you may not. A characteristic that helps identify that is the beak of the female has black markings in here, and the beak of the male does not. And so I believe this is a male. I'm a photographer. I claim to be a photographer, but I don't claim to be a birder. So, if somebody wants to say, no, that's not right, I wouldn't be offended if you say that. And so there's the typical male mallard that we see. Of course, beautiful green head, and then it still has no black marking on the beak. We see those all the time. If you walk down the arroyo, you're almost guaranteed to see some mallards almost any time of year. So they preen, they pull out the loose feathers, and as new feathers are growing in, and they do that. And I like the picture, so this is one where I'm probably doing it more for the picture than for what I'm going to say about it. Another duck I really like, I think they're such great looking ducks, are the hooded Mergansers. They weigh about 1.4 pounds. They're not a very big duck. And if you look at of course, the head here, that crown really is interesting. I really like that. But Sheila says that the female is pretty too. So they've got a nice hood here, and so they like that. Now, if you look closely at that, you'll see this beak. He's open, and this one is talking, probably just squawking. But I like to kind of think, well, he's giving directions to the male and where to go or what to do. Is that sexist? If it's sexist, I apologize. And so sometimes when he has his hood all the way up, this is what he looks like. So, you can see really a nice white mark there. The other thing I wanted to mention is that if you look at this beak, that doesn't look like a duck beak. I mean, the duck beak is a broader thing. Well, this one has a different characteristic. It eats fish. And so its beak is long and skinny, and it has very sharp teeth all the way along that, just little needle teeth. And so he can grab a fish and hold on, and that fish probably isn't going to slither away. One time recently, I saw there were actually 2 males and 2 females, and the males were squabbling. And so this male was chasing that one off. You can see its beak is open. He's scolding the other one, and they're going kind of as fast as they can. There's also a common merganser. Now, the hooded merganser weighs about 1.4 pounds, but the common merganser is a lot bigger. It's like 3.4 pounds. It's also a fish eater. It also has the beak that's long and skinny and has rows of teeth in it. So this one has a fish. This is the only time I've ever seen a merganser with a fish. And he caught that fish, and this is the first picture I got. This is what he was doing when I first saw him. This is at like the big oak tree. It's a fish ladder up by the big oak tree is where this was taking place. And so when a duck or whatever it is catches a fish, any bird that eats fish, it has to turn it and swallow it head first. Now the fins on a fish will stick up, but it lays down to the back towards the tail. So if you swallow it head first, it forces those fins down and it doesn't get caught in your throat or in the bird's throat. If you would try to do it the other way, it would then the fins would pop up and So this is the way they have to do it. They have to turn it and make it go head first. And so there's the same situation. You can see the tail of the fish going down. And, this is a pretty big fish. I mean, maybe 4 to 6 inches, 5 or 6 inches. It's a decent sized fish. I think that Arroyo says there's no fish in there, but there are. And I wanted to show you some of the ducks that I really like. There's a lot of different ducks that we see. Some of them in this water reclamation pond. I'm seeing a lot of variety of ducks there right now. This was taken just a couple of weeks ago, and oops, I'm not ready for that. But it's a ringneck duck. I'm not sure why it's a ringneck, but I really like the beak, what the beak looks like. Over here, there are 2 males and a female, and of course here I've isolated the male to show some characteristics. And this is a bufflehead duck. It reminds me of the hooded merganser, but it's different. It's got a white body, and this duck you see in lakes normally. I've never seen one on the Arroyo. And so this is the female of that species. So it looks a little different. This is a ruddy duck. You can see the bill looks a little bit different. This weighs about 1 pound. I could give you the weights as we go along here. But this was a pretty light duck, weighs about 1 pound. And where am I? The bufflehead weighs about 13 ounces. The ruddy duck weighs about 1.2 pounds is the number I have for them. And this is an American widgeon. This one was flying right by the bridge at Stoneridge Creek, so it isn't very far from here. And that one weighs about 1.6 pounds. This one's called a common goldeneye, so you can see that the head shapes vary by quite a bit. But you can also see, that's a goldeneye. That's pretty characteristic. But the males always have this patch on them, so they're pretty easy to identify. I identify it more by the white patch and the white body than the golden eye. And finally, this is a shoveler, a northern shoveler duck. And let me see. And that weighs about 2 pounds, 2.1. So you can see that the beak would kind of think of a shoveler for some reason. It's, it's big and it's kind of broad. Double-crested cormorants. We have quite a few of those. Well, a lot of places, but we have it over at Shadow Cliffs Park. They have a rookery. The one tree is devoted to these birds, and then another one is devoted to the great blue heron and the great egret. Mostly great blue heron. Let me see what that one weighs. About 3.7 pounds. It's a pretty good sized bird. And the fishermen don't like it because they eat fish, and they eat a pretty big fish. The Department of Fish and Game stocks fish that are about 10 inches long. Well, that's a perfect size for this bird. He goes in and really can clean out the fish after Fish and Game stock it. Some private stock or do their private stocking on lakes, they'll put a bigger fish in, so that's too big for the cormorant. I tufted up here. I've never seen it on any other bird or on any other cormorant. I've seen a little bit of a tuft, but not like you see this. And by the way, this one was not taken in the areas I'm talking about. We have lots of the cormorants there, but this particular one was taken at Elizabeth Lake in Fremont. And the Canada geese, they weigh anywhere from about 3.8 pounds up to 9.5 pounds. So they're a big bird. And the ones we have here are some of the big birds. And this one is the water restoring pond over by the big oak tree. And I'm not sure that I have too much to say about this, but I just like the picture. And the reflection was so perfect. This one just got a drink of water. You can see the ripples there. And then this one is just standing there. Twice I have seen a flock of Canada geese flying into this pond, the reclamation pond, but there's a stranger in it, and that is this goose. It's a snow goose, and like I say, I've only seen it happen twice. It might be the same flock, I'm not sure. In the Sacramento Valley, they have flocks of these snow geese that just cover the skies. It's not that it's a rare bird, but it's just not very prevalent here. It weighs, let me see if I can get that, 5.7 pounds. So it's a pretty good sized bird. But you can see that it's not nearly as big as the Canada geese. Great heron, I should say. I'm going to move into the herons and egret category. This one is like a 7-ounce bird. I like the wings on it. Its neck is tucked down. It has a longer neck, but nothing like the great egret or great blue heron. The next largest bird in this category is the snowy egret, and it weighs about 13 ounces. If you look carefully, at least the people in the front look carefully, you can see that there's a fish. He's got a fish in his beak. When a bird catches a fish, where does he catch it? Well, he catches it at the end of his beak. I mean, he goes in and grabs it, and it's right at the end of his beak. So now he's got to get it back into his throat. And so the way he does that is he tosses it into the air and then catches it farther back in its beak. And during the process, he also has to turn the fish so it goes down head first. So he's got some things to do when after he's caught that fish. Of course, they're very good at it. The way you can tell a snowy egret is it has yellow feet. It's sort of that Marguerite told me it has yellow feet and a black beak, and the great egret is the opposite. It has black feet and a yellow beak. Now, the snowy egret doesn't always have a black beak, but it always has the yellow legs. So the The great egret and great blue heron happen to get both of them in the same picture. From this, you'd say, well, maybe the egret is bigger, but it isn't. The egret weighs 2.7 pounds, 1.9 pounds, and the great blue heron weighs 5.3 pounds, so almost 3 times as big. Now, it's farther back, so it doesn't look as big. But if you look at the neck, the great egret really has a long neck. I love photographing these. There are a lot of them. They're easy to photograph. You get them on water, and it's just perfect background, and so you really get good pictures. The great blue heron it's a more sturdy bird. It's a heavier bird than the egret. I mean, heavier just in the way it's conformed. And I'm going to show you some great egret pictures because they're easy to take, and it takes time, and every once in a while you get a good one is the way it kind of works. So I like this one, and I like the showing the water as it comes up as he's just taking off. And then he has to land, so there he is getting his feet down and slowing down with his wings. He's got his flaps down there for sure. And I like this one just because it's three-dimensional, and you can see the head sticking out. It looks like, okay, that's over that and this. It looks like some sort of airplane, I don't know. But I like the composition of that one. And then when you get a reflection, that's always nice. So I've managed to get that. And one of the most important things to me is to get the bird in focus. Well, sometimes you do and sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get the eye in focus and the end of the wings not in focus, or vice versa. But so you want the eye in focus is what you really want. But if it's just something in focus, it's going to probably be okay. And so the legs are definitely in focus, and the bird is kind of in focus. And they eat fish too. When you see a bird at the edge of a stream, or in the stream, or in the water someplace, standing there very quietly, then you're pretty sure it's fishing. And they're pretty successful. A lot of times you don't have to wait very long until they've caught something. So this one is down in the Arroyo Mocho, and it's caught a fish that, like a shiner or sucker or something. And I would guess maybe 5 inches long, something like that. Not a big fish, but not a minnow either. And again, it catches the fish on the end of its beak. This is the same bird and the same fish, so just another view of what that's like. So they also catch crawdads, and they catch those a lot, maybe equal amounts between fish and crawdads. And when they catch these, they have to go through the same process. They have to toss them up in the air and then catch them back in the beak to work them up to their throat where they can swallow them. Great blue heron, 5.3 pounds. Yeah, 5.3 pounds. This one's standing on one leg. I think it's doing that, not because it only has one leg, but it's got way better balance than I do, and it can do that. Out at Shadow Cliffs right now, they're just beginning to build their nests and get ready for the mating and hatching season. So if you want to see the birds at the rookery, this is really a good time to start looking for them. And if you want to go there, I can tell you exactly how to do it. Arnold? Usually at least 1,000th, and often I'll use a 2,000 in that range. And now with our we can get such high ISO settings that you can do that. It's amazing what we can do with our modern cameras. And so I'll go back a minute. So you can see that he's flying with his head tucked. Well, he's got a long neck, but he's still got his head tucked. And so as they get ready to land, they extend the head and the neck. And they have a characteristic. This is the only bird in the area that I know of that has these feathers that grow out. And there are 2 feathers, one out of each side of its head. And it's a very long feather. And you can kind of tell their age generally by the length of that feather. So as they get longer, it means that they're older birds. I like this picture because of the lighting. It has, and you recognize this picture because it's on the mural, a prominent place on the mural. This picture won first place in the Outdoor Writers Association of California photography section, action photography section, this last year. Well, you can see that it's got something in its beak, and it's not anything very big, but it's shaking it, trying to disorient it, whatever, so that it can toss it back and swallow it. That's how you can see the pattern of how it's shaking its head. And so these are the parents and the chicks in the nest. This one you don't see too much, but the parent is just landing. And right here is the beak of a chick and another chick over here. And then over here, you can see the parent here and then the chicks begging for food. So the parent catches the food and then regurgitates it so that for the chicks, right down into their throat. I want to talk about their hairstyling or feather styling. As you can see that this bird is kind of laid down. It's got the feathers in the back. This bird is a young bird. And I've even thought, well, maybe that's another chick, but I think it's just a young parent. And you can see that the chicks have kind of crew cuts. That's just the way they start, and then they grow all these other feathers as they age. The American kestrel, it's also called a sparrowhawk, but weighs 4.1 ounces, is the smallest hawk that we have. We see it a lot. It's along the Arroyo. If you walk the Arroyo from Stoneridge Creek Bridge to El Charro Bridge, in that area, you see them, it's not like every time. Maybe every fourth or fifth time you'll get a chance to see one of these. And I like their color, and of course they can identify by it always has this black mark right up to the eye here. And there he is with a little different view, or she, I'm not sure which is which. And then was a picture of one flying. This is an adult Cooper's hawk. Now, a Cooper's hawk is a smaller hawk. Well, not smaller than that. But the Cooper's hawk, where is he in here? It weighs 1 pound. At least that, on adult hawk weighs approximately that. It has a long tail, and it has bars across its tail. It chases small birds as part of its prey. And so there he is on the ground, and I almost like that picture better, but the background is a lot better up here, so I like the first one. And there's a juvenile Cooper hawk. These are all taken along the Arroyo Creek. One time, maybe at least 15 years ago, maybe 20, we were eating dinner and heard this crash and went and looked on our patio, and there was a ring of feathers, just a few feathers, on our patio window. And this Cooper's hawk was laying down there and completely out of it. And I thought, oh, he's not going to make it, But he had apparently chasing some bird, and the bird swerved and he didn't. Or maybe he saw his reflection in there and was chasing after himself, I'm not sure, but he really crashed into the window. And I thought he was a goner. But I went and got my camera, and by that time he was up a little bit and had his eyes were beginning to open. Now you can see there's a wing here, there's a wing here, there's his tail back right there. So a little later, it didn't take too long, but within a minute or two, he had gotten at least to this stage or maybe a little farther along. You can see that his talons are curled, but now his eyes are open. He looks a little bit more alert. He's all kind of sprawled out there with his tail over here, so he hasn't made much progress there. But a little bit later, he stood up and kind of stood there for a while and walked around a little and flew away. So I think he was all right. White-tailed kite, we see those quite a bit. And a typical white-tailed adult kite weighs 12 ounces. It always has these markings under its wing. And what's unique about this bird is it hovers. And we'll see it. You'll see a bird out as you're driving along Stoneridge Creek or coming out of our driveway. You see this bird, and you watch it for a little bit, and it hovers. Okay, you know what it is. It's a white-tailed kite. So it's easy to identify as long as you spot it hovering. And so there are different views of it. It has black marks here and here, and then some dark wingtips, but it's white, mostly white. And you can see the various colors. It has kind of a bluish back on it, so I'm surprised by that. But if you get the back of it, that's what it's like. I almost never see more than one at a time. There was a while where I was seeing two that I think they're siblings. So, but this one is different, and now we have 3 white-tailed kites in here. We know a little bit more about them because this one is an adult, and the reason we know that is because it's all white. But if you look at these two and look at the chest, they have a rust or red mark there. This one does too. This one has a taggle feather on the head, and we'll see that later. But the point is I can identify all those birds through the action. And so the adult has a mouse. I think it's a mouse. Maybe it's a vole or something else, but it has some sort of food. And the other two came flying to it as fast as they could. This one went up and made a pass at the mouse and missed. And remember, see, here's the taggle head so they can tell which it is. And then the taggle head went up and made a pass at the mouse, and it got it. And so there he's got the mouse. Now, I think that this is an adult teaching the chicks how to survive, or maybe just supplementing their food after they've fledged. I'm not sure that's the case, but I think that's what is happening. So a lot of you have seen this picture because I send out pictures and people have seen that. But if you haven't seen that, what do you think it is? What kind of bird? Now, look at the head, look at the tail, look at the underbelly, and what does that look like? It looks like, yeah. And what happened? He was preening. He was really doing his. He was shaking his feathers out, whatever he did. I think he was getting ready for the morning. But so he looked like that, and then pretty soon he kind of reshuffled his feathers, and he looked like that. So it's a red-tailed hawk. The red-tailed hawk weighs about 2.4 pounds, yeah. So it's one of the medium-sized and bigger hawks. And, we see red-tailed hawks all the time. If you see a hawk on there and somebody asks you what it is, it's a red-tailed hawk. Well, you may not be right all the time. You'll be right most of the time. I wanted to show in this picture, really what I wanted to show you is this claw. Wow, that really can latch onto something and hold on, puncture and hold on. Also that its beak, you can see where the top beak comes down. The bottom beak is kind of cut off so that the top beak comes down and fits outside of it. And it has a eyelid. It has a translucent eyelid that it can blink the eyelid and maybe protect it or maybe clean it. And I like this picture. This day I was out there on the fence, which is just at the very southwest corner of our property, along the trail that blocks you from going west on the trail. So you can really see the detail. You let me get really close is what I was going to get at. And I thought, I got up there and I said, well, he'll fly. I'll take a picture of him flying. Well, he never flew. And I said, I'm close enough. I bothered him enough. I don't have to do that. So I just backed away and never did see him fly. But so a characteristic that I don't normally see is this. And I love those. They're kind of ears or whatever. They're not really ears, but whatever they are. But I've only seen it in this hawk, so I don't know what to make of that. So this is another hawk, and flying. And I believe it's a red-tailed hawk. I'm not sure. I think it's a juvenile red-tailed hawk. And it's hard to identify these hawks, for me anyway, because there's the dark ones. There are dark phases. There's light phases. There are dark ones here and lighter ones there. And the juveniles are different than the adults, and the fledgling are different than the adults. So there's so many variations you have to look at. And so I have trouble identifying, and that's why I have my experts who help me identify them. So this is a picture of a kite chasing a hawk. Kite weighs 12 ounces. The hawk weighs 2.4 pounds. So its kite is quite a bit smaller, and it's more agile also. And what it would do is it would come in and just kind of bomb the hawk. It would come in always from above, come in at high speed, hit the hawk. I don't know if it even hit him, if it touched him, but he was threatening the hawk. The kite has a territory out here that if you want to see kites, if you walk the trail between Stoneridge Creek and El Charro Creek, you'll almost always see a kite out there, maybe across the way, just sitting in the top of a tree. They always sit in the top of a tree because they want to see the territory around them. But so this is something that happened, but he's chasing the hawk away. He would hit him, and then he goes on. He doesn't do battle with him. He just makes a quick attack, and he's gone. And this is another one got in the last 2 or 3 weeks. This picture. So now this is a northern harrier hawk. Part of the reason you can tell it's a northern harrier hawk, it has this white rump. So it's a good indicator. And this is quite a bit smaller. Let me see where it is. So that's only about 15 ounces. Now the kite is about 12 ounces, and the northern harrier is about 15 ounces. So they're not too differently matched in weight, and so they're kind of pretty agile. And I'm surprised that this harrier could turn around and face the kite as it's attacking. You know, you get one of these, and say, wow, that's a great picture if it were just in perfect focus or if it were just a little bit better. And so, you know, kind of, darn, I wish it were better, but I like everything except that is good. And the lighting is bad too, you know, it's lighting from the right, and so whatever. Enough of that. At Shadow Cliffs Park, we very often see an osprey. An osprey is a little bigger bird. It's about a pound heavier than the red-tailed hawk. It's about 3.4 pounds, and it's a fish eater. So it hangs out over the water and watches for something, and then flies and tries to catch whatever it sees coming by that's shallow that it has a shot at. And we see turkey vultures all the time, of course, and I think of them as kind of an ugly bird, but when you get them, when they're looking just right, it's got some characteristics that's kind of pretty. Another factor on that bird is that if you look at its nostril right here, it goes all the way through the head. So I thought that was an unusual thing, but you can see right through there from, you know, right over to the sky. And what they do, as you all know, is clean up the dead birds, and, you know, if something is hit by cars or if there's a kill or a natural death. Right now, yesterday, that's not me. No. There's a kill, and I think it's a fox that is just across the street from the creek view. And I saw it because the vultures were working on it yesterday when I was there. And so, anyway, they were just, you know, that's their function, and at least that's how they make their living. Bald eagle. This is another picture that was taken outside the area, but this was taken at Lake Elizabeth in Fremont. But a few days ago, within 10 days ago, the last 10 days, I was out at Shadow Cliffs, and we weren't seeing any birds, not the great blue herons or the egrets or even the cormorants. Well, got out the cormorant tree, and there were 2 bald eagles, mature bald eagles with white heads, sitting in the tree there. So, of course, I tried to take pictures, but it was a very foggy morning. And I got pictures, and, you know, I say, yeah, those are bald eagles. And everybody will say, yeah, they're bald eagles. But it's not very good pictures, so I haven't published it. Our heaviest birds, there are 2 of them. Well, there's maybe a third one. The wild turkey weighs about 16.2 pounds. That's what Sibley identifies it as, 16.2 pounds. And during the spring, they're out there displaying, and, you know, they look so big. That's mostly feathers, what you're seeing. But I like that this has got a good sun angle, And you can see so many colors in it. That, the red neck, different colors all over, brown, blacks, white. The feathers have different patterns on them. The ones here, and those will go down, they'll scratch those in the ground. They'll drag those in the ground and leave marks that in loose soil. I love the bird. And I should tell you that where I take these pictures, I go to Veterans Hospital. I'm not even sure I'm supposed to have a camera out there, but if I just take the pictures and go on, they don't seem to hassle me. We're getting out of time, but I'm almost done. But if you look at a turkey, now this is not the same turkey, and this is a lot younger turkey because of the snoot here. In fact, that grows up here like this, then grows and then droops down. Well, that's what's happened over here. So this is a very much younger bird. But all the turkeys, when they're just turkeys, just sitting, not strutting, they look kind of like this. And you can see there's so much more feather here. When they open their feathers, they make a sound. It's kind of like, it reminds me if you have a wooden shutters and you close the shutter down and it clinks on the wood, that's what the sound that it makes. The largest bird, well, this is the white pelican. It's a freshwater pelican. We see it out at Shadow Cliffs quite often. And they're a big bird, 16.4 pounds. They have a wingspan of 108 inches, which is pretty big. The turkey has a wingspan of about 68 inches, and they're not very good flyers. They can fly up into a tree. They can fly a fraction of a mile to get away from something, but they're not very good flyers. This one is, but it is hard to get that much weight up in the air and get it moving, so it runs along the top of the water. That's how it gets its speed up and gets started and then takes off. This is characteristic of a lot of birds. The coots do this, the ducks do, or the geese do this, and so there are quite a few birds, even though they're not too large, that run across the top of the water. And there they are. They have the big pouch to go down and pick up a lot of water and whatever food is in it. During the mating season, they have this growth on their beak, and it disappears after the mating season. It's kind of like a deer and its antlers. And we have squirrels. We have a lot of squirrels. I think this is great food for the hawks that we have around here. And we have a couple types of rabbit. What kind of rabbit is this? Jackrabbit. Everybody knows it's a jackrabbit. Good. So, it's got the big ears, characteristic of it. And the tail is very different from the cottontail rabbit that we also have. So you can see that this is the cottontail. And the ears are not nearly as big, but it still has big ears. And we have a rare albino deer. It's not very often you see an albino deer, and we have them here. And how do I know it's albino? Well, it's light to start with, but the other thing that really is, makes it sure is if you look at the eyes, they're a white eye, pupil of the eye is white, or the pupil is dark, but the rest of the eye is white. And if you look at a ordinary deer and look at the eye here, it's dark. And they have fawns out there. This one is, I think these are really late in the season, and I'm surprised that there still had spots on it. But this one had spots. Those of you that have been here for a while know that we had a fox family that actually made their den under the creek view, probably right over in here, right in the corner of Creek View. And so they had 4 kits, and they were around, and then there's too many people around, and they moved them in another area. I found that area, and this is where I took most of these pictures. So there are the 3 kits. They had 4, but there are only 3 here. And just the fox is such a regal animal. And if you look at it, and this is sitting on the driveway outside of Mendocino. So it's a red fox, but it's got black ears, it's got black hair, and it's got black legs. Both of its legs are black, and certainly a nice big tail. Well, they got pretty acclimated, and you couldn't walk right up to them or anything, but they would let you get pretty close. A fox in the wild is pretty scary or afraid of things. He doesn't let you get close, but these will let you get reasonably close. And so with a telephoto lens, you could get decent pictures. And you can see what he's doing. He's yawning. Well, I've been looking around. I haven't seen you yawning, but I think you're probably getting tired of this. And that is my last slide. So I thank you for attending and for your support. Thank you.